the truth they refuse to teach us about colonial enslavement in Africa. My brothers and my sisters, come closer. Today, I want to take you on a journey they refuse to teach us in school, a journey they banned from our textbooks, a story they hide even today. It is the story of how Africa was enslaved again even after slavery was supposed to have ended. This is the truth they will never teach us anywhere else. If you love Africa, if you respect truth, if you want your mind to open, stay with me till the end. Let us begin. Many people believe that once the slave ships stopped, Africa became free. But that is not true. The chains on our wrists were removed, but new chains were prepared for our land, our minerals, and our mines. Europe realized that instead of carrying Africans across the ocean, they could carry Africa itself away. Not the people, but the land, the resources, the identity, the future. They called it colonialism, but it was nothing but another form of enslavement. Now listen carefully. In the year 1884 and 1885, something happened in Europe. A meeting, a gathering, a secret table where the fate of millions of Africans was decided without a single African being present. This meeting was called the Berlin Conference. Imagine this picture. Powerful men from Britain, France, Belgium, Portugal, Germany, Italy, and Spain sat inside a warm room in Berlin. Maps on the table, pens in their hands, greed in their hearts. And they divided Africa like someone dividing meat in the market. They took rulers and drew lines across African lands, lines that did not care about tribes, lines that did not care about cultures, lines that did not care about kingdoms that existed long before Europe even knew Africa had cities. In one afternoon, they separated families, they broke kingdoms, they cut people apart, and they claimed the land as their property. This was the beginning of colonial enslavement. After taking the land, they needed workers, so they forced Africans to work under terrible conditions. Men were forced into mines, women were forced onto farms, children carried loads bigger than their bodies. And for what? For rubber, gold, diamonds, cocoa, cotton, salt, copper, ivory. These things were taken to Europe to build palaces, factories, and cities. Meanwhile, Africans worked from morning till night, beaten, punished, and unpaid. This was not development. This was not civilization. This was forced labor. This was another form of enslavement. My brothers and sisters, do you know the painful part? Europeans came to African land, took everything, and then demanded that Africans pay tax for living on their own land. If an African refused to pay tax, the colonial government would burn the village, seize property, or arrest the men. People were forced to work just to pay the tax of their own oppression. That was not governance. That was economic enslavement. To control a people, you take their land. And that is exactly what colonial powers did. They seized farms, they seized forests, they seized rivers, they seized sacred lands and turned them into private property. Many African farmers became strangers on their own soil. You could be born on a land, but you were not allowed to step on it unless the colonial master agreed. Land is life. When they took land, they took life. Colonialism was not only about land, it was also about the mind. They taught Africans that their language was inferior. They taught Africans that their culture was backward. They taught Africans that their skin was a curse. They replaced African names with European names. They replaced African systems with European systems. They replaced African history with European lies. Many Africans grew up believing that Europe was the savior, but Europe was the oppressor. This mental enslavement is still active today. But let the world hear this truth today. Africa did not kneel down quietly. Kings, queens, warriors, mothers, fathers, youths, they fought, they rebelled, they resisted with everything they had. People like Ya Asantewa of Ghana, Samori Toure, Nandi and Dedan Kimathi of Kenya, the Maji Maji warriors of Tanzania, the Zulu Kingdom, the Benin Kingdom, and many more whose names were removed from our textbooks. They stood up against guns, cannons, and armies. Many lost their lives, but they kept the fire of freedom burning. Colonialism was powerful, but African resistance was even more powerful. By the mid-1900s, Europe became meat. Wars drained them, their economies collapsed, and the African spirit refused to die. One by one, African countries demanded their freedom, not because Europe suddenly became kind, but because Africa refused to remain in chains. Ghana rose in 1957, then Nigeria, then Senegal, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Zambia, Mozambique, Angola, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and many others whose names were removed from our textbooks. They stood up against guns, cannons, and armies. Many lost their lives, but they kept the fire of freedom burning. Colonialism was powerful, but African resistance was even more powerful. Even after independence, the damage was deep. Countries were left divided, families separated, languages broken, economies built to serve foreign interest, leaders trained to obey Europe, borders that continue to cause conflict even today. Colonialism ended on paper, but the influence is still alive in politics, education, religion, economy, and identity. My brothers and sisters, listen to this final truth. We cannot change the past, but we must understand it. Because when you know where the pain started, you can know where healing must begin. Colonialism was not just history, it shaped Africa's present. It shaped who we are. It shaped the challenges we face. But it also shaped our strength. Africa is rising again. Africa is remembering itself. Africa is finding its voice. Africa is awakening. Knowing the truth is the first step to freedom. If you learned something today, my African brothers and sisters, please like this video, share this video, and let more Africans hear this truth. Write in the comments, what part of African history do you want me to talk about next? What questions do you have? Which hidden truth should we uncover together? Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for standing for the truth. Africa to the world. Africa forever.